Hello, and welcome to the world of Pokemon. My name is Professor Noki, and you're watching Prof Noki. Today, we will be traversing the dimensions of time and space, accessing realms unseen, exploring the depths of the Pokemon multiverse, and seeing what we may discover. I'm sure many of you are aware that there are many different versions of the Pokemon world. There are the video games, a few different television anime series and movies, the manga, trading card game, as well as various others. Some of these share elements that are similar, if not entirely the same altogether, though the overall feel, along with the finer details, are usually drastically different. When it comes to the video games, it has long been known from an official explanation by the developers that each cartridge is considered its very own universe, existing parallel to one another, still connected, yet separate all the same, which is backed up by the fact that every player has a completely different yet strikingly similar experience in worlds that are almost identical to one another, playing through mostly the same events in time. Though beyond those parallels, almost everything is entirely different about their experiences. Within the games, we can primarily deduct three separate storyline universes that include a number of different timelines between games in a given generation, such as the differences between Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Isn't the multiverse fun? We'll call these universes the original, the remake, and the mega. The core timeline of the original universe begins with the games of Red and Blue, which actually take place at the exact same time as Ruby and Sapphire, followed a few years later by the events of Gold and Silver, and around the same time as the happenings of Diamond and Pearl. Parallel to the core timeline of these generations was a branch timeline that included the events of Yellow, Emerald, Crystal, and Platinum respectively. This could potentially be considered its own universe altogether, though to me the games do display enough similarity through the portrayal of the events, and thus could represent the perspective of a differing timeline within the same universe. Beyond this point, the focus of this universe returns solely to the core timeline, and continues with Black and White, and Black 2 and White 2. Sun and Moon follow it up from there, and in my honest opinion, I believe the upcoming Sword and Shield will as well. In the universe of the remakes, there are a lot of similarities to that of the original, namely the core pillars of the story, the regional setting, and the playable character. There are also many noticeable differences, however, especially in game mechanics, storyline details, and the Pokemon that can be caught in the region. And these games truly cannot be considered part of that original universe. Rather, one very closely parallel to it, but still existing separately. This universe begins with the events in Fire Red and Leaf Green, continues through to Johto in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then really hasn't been seen since. That is, until somewhat with the Generation 7 remakes of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which in theory itself could exist in a bit of a rift in the space-time continuum, existing somehow between universes of the original, the remake, and the mega, somehow due to the events revolving around Necrozma and Ultra Wormholes maybe? But for today, I won't go too deep down the Digsby hole on that one. There has been a lot of speculation that remakes for the Generation 4 games, Diamond and Pearl, could very well be right around the corner, and it will be very interesting to see which one of these universes they take place in. Whether they pick up in this one, or they take the route of the Generation 3 remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and occur in the Mega universe. Mega Infernape and Mega Torterra, and Mega Empoleon would be absolutely amazing. The Mega universe is set apart from the others due to its inclusion of the Mega Stones and evolution, which stems from the use of the ultimate weapon 3,000 years ago to stop war in Kalos, and the energy that was released from it. The timeline, as we've seen it thus far, begins in Kanto with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and then onward to the aforementioned Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. Like the games they are based on, these take place at the same time in their universe as another set of games, X and Y. And there's really no telling when there will be another Pokemon game set in this universe, whether it will be with the much talked about upcoming Generation 4 remakes, or whether we'll have to wait a lot longer. As a relative side note, the ability to transfer these Pokemon between these universes and their interwoven timelines through services like Bank or the upcoming Home, further strengthens my conclusions in the What Are Pokemon video that I made for Noki Jr., and I certainly advise you check it out if you have not already. Another version of the Pokemon world that very closely mirrors the games, even though we've only really seen a very small connection between the two of them, is the main anime series. The connection between these worlds came very recently in the Pokemon Sun and Moon games, when completing Acerola's trial and encountering Mimikyu in the back room of the abandoned shopping mall, where a very small picture of Ash and his Pikachu can be seen hanging on the wall. Another seemingly direct, though not as official reference between the two, came by way of the Pokemon I Choose You movie. In this movie, a new version of Ash, yet another example of the Pokeverse that we'll discuss shortly, meets an elder man in his search for Ho-Oh, who bears a similar resemblance to the character design for what an aged Red would look like, even down to his iconic hat. The overall world of the anime resembles that of the games impeccably, though arguably adds a lot more detail and immersion, for the obvious reason that the show was made for a weekly audience, and as thus must take a lot more time to develop the characters, plot and subplot, storyline, and a lot of the areas in between the major events and cities. After 20 plus seasons now on the air, this version of the Pokemon world has flushed out the most detail for us to understand. It has also included the longest run of any continuous storytelling we've seen in Pokemon. While the games jump around a lot and it can be quite difficult to have any sort of grasp on any real solid timeline, the show, and most of the main movies, have always followed the same Ash, progressing and building from his adventures with his friends through each region of the world. That is, until Alola, and the Sun and Moon series of the anime, where not only did they try a new approach to the art style of the show, a decision that may have stirred a little bit of controversy among the fans, who really thoroughly enjoyed the refined look of the XYZ series, but at the same time they essentially did a soft reboot of the character Ash. I say essentially because some of the elements of his characteristics stayed the same. Much of his travels, his experiences with Brock and Misty, and even his interactions with Jesse and James. While his experience as a trainer, especially from possibly his best point in the black and white to X, Y, and Z arc of the storyline, had diminished greatly in many ways. A lot of the lessons he had learned previously now seemed lost, and it was as if he was once again a novice trainer. In interviews, writers had admitted that this was not the exact same Ash that we had all known and loved. Rather, they were two different versions of the same character, living similar yet very different lives. In this transition between the X, Y, and Z and Sun and Moon series is when the continuum for the original anime universe truly came to an end. Since then, we have no longer seen that Ash in any of the new content that Pokemon has made, but rather two, technically three, new Ashes. The Ash from the aforementioned Alola anime series, a new Ash introduced into the most recent movies I Choose You and The Power of Us, and yet another new 3D Ash from the Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution remake of the first Pokemon movie, which is based primarily on the classic, though elements of the movie are definitely different, making it a parallel universe entirely to the one the original Ash was in. The Ash from the most recent movies that I mentioned is a very interesting version of the character, who seems to be a lot more confident and mostly less brash. His role in these movies seems to be developing more into a supporting character for beginner trainers to help them understand the meaning of what it truly is to be a Pokemon trainer. Even the focus of this Ash's choice and use of Pokemon almost entirely and solely revolves around Pikachu, with very minor elements of his strife with the development of Charmander included in the first movie I Choose You. With all these differing versions of Ash floating around at the forefront of the Pokeverse lately, it is rather uncertain which iteration of the character we will see in the upcoming Sword and Shield series of the anime. Personally, with the possibility of the Galar-Kalos connection, and the fact that Alola was always meant to be something different and unique on its own in both the anime and the games, I could see them going back to the artwork and to the Ash who was pretty much thriving at the end of the X, Y, and Z series. Could you imagine how fantastic that would look and how great that anime would be in such a culturally rich region such as Galar. In regards to the countless various other media universes that exist within the Pokemon world, I am a lot less versed. I've only briefly skimmed the manga, collect the trading cards, though don't play with them competitively, and never had much of an opportunity to really play the spin-off games outside of a few such as Colosseum, Mystery Dungeon, Pokken, and some others. It's very easy though to see that the Pokeverse has been expanding rapidly and adding more and more perspectives for us to enjoy in the world of Pokemon. What do you think about the massive Pokeverse bursting with possibilities? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been Professor Noki signing off for Prof Noki.